Let's get right to it. We were talking about this on the little 2-minute TV-only stub on the way in. The memo that came out last night from Commissioner Roger Goodell to all 32 teams. Now, look, yesterday Sims and I were talking about the draft, and during a break, I contacted Brian McCarthy, the league office, and I said, look, I'm convinced the draft is going forward. Tell me if I'm wrong. And he provided on the record statement, the draft will proceed as scheduled. So we knew yesterday morning the draft will proceed as scheduled. Last night, if there was anyone who was doubting, if there was anyone who was questioning, Roger Goodell made it abundantly clear in a memo that was sent to all teams and that was released to multiple members of the media, the draft will proceed as scheduled on April 23rd through April 25th, period. Exclamation point, end of discussion. Peter, your reaction to the decision to go forward when there were multiple general managers, including Mickey Loomis on your podcast, pushing back against the idea of proceeding on the 23rd of April and arguing for a delay in the draft.
Well, I've tried to put myself in Roger Goodell's shoes since I read that memo last night, Mike, and I think, just my total gut feeling and some informed feeling about each side is that Roger Goodell totally understands the people who say this is a tone-deaf remark. Or tone-deaf situation where they believe that, he understands how people believe that this is, tone-deaf, that he should be delaying the draft out of respect to what's going on in this country. But I think the other part of it is what we saw last week during free agency. How many emails did I get to my column saying, geez, thank you for continuing to do this? Because I, like everybody else, was thinking, boy, what a useless thing that we're doing with what's going on in our country. I think people need something. And I think Roger Goodell and the owners of this league not only are trying to capitalize on being the only game in town, Mike, but I also think that they believe that they are providing some help to the United States and to the people who love football who have nothing else to concentrate on.
Yeah, it's one of those rare situations where your own self-interest mesh with everyone else's interests. You can come off as altruistic while at the same time you're lining your pocket with a process that is going to result in the highest ratings they've ever had for the draft because there's nothing else going on and people are going to look forward to it. I'm looking forward to it. Millions will be looking forward to it because it gives us a common shared experience at a time when nothing seems normal. We know the draft is going to go forward. Now, it's going to be a very abnormal TV production, but that's okay. It gives us something that we can all gather around that feels like it's real sports, even though it isn't real sports. And here's the money quote from the memo. And there are several important quotes in there we'll be talking about today. Goodell writes to all teams, I have personally discussed this matter with many other owners, club executives, and coaches. There's widespread support for the Management Council Executive Committee's conclusion to go forward. Everyone recognizes that public health conditions are highly uncertain, and there is no assurance that we can select a different date and be confident that conditions will be significantly more favorable than they are today. Look, this ultimately was the same argument that I think was the only argument, the best argument for going forward last week with free agency. It's bad now. Who knows when it's going to be better? When are you going to be able to do the draft if you don't do it on April 23rd? When will it be better? Can you do a draft in July or August with football season looming? So I understand that side of it, that if we delay it, just like with free agency, when will there be the right time to do it? Things are going to get worse before they get better. Let's just go ahead and do it now. I understand that argument, Peter, at a time when we really don't know when that window would open and it would be the right time for this to go forward.
Yeah, and Mike, last week, in my column on Monday, so this would have been 11 days ago, I wrote and quoted two general managers anonymously who basically said, this is insane what we're doing. Do we have we're tone deaf. We don't see what's going on in the country. And yet over the next, I'd say 3 or 4 days, maybe 5 days, culminating with all the Brady stuff late in the week, all of that stuff, I think, was fodder for you, for me, for everybody who covers the game, and for all the people. Honestly, Mike, I got a lot of mail to my column in the last week plus about this topic, and I did not get one email, not one out of maybe 50 that said essentially, the NFL should have postponed free agency. And again, obviously, those are football fans writing to me. I get it. But I get my share of hateful emails as well as probably most people in the business do. So I really think that is one of the big reasons why the NFL is going ahead with this. Not only to keep the trains running, let's go, but to basically say we're going to be able to give something to this country that we feel like will be good for the country. Hey, honestly, Mike, Adam Schefter had a great idea on ESPN, I thought, and he said the NFL really should have one round a day and should make
That's a horrible idea. It's a horrible idea. Horrible idea.
Why?
Horrible idea. Because nobody gives a crap after round 2. Or let's say after round 3. That last day, round 4 through 7, is interminable. Even as we are craving something real. Round 4, round 5, round 6, round 7.
What it does, Mike?
Nobody cares.
What it does? It gets people like Todd McShay and Daniel Jeremiah and all those people to sit up there with Rich Eisen and Trey Wingo and all those people and just talk about the NFL. And have guys on Zoom video conferencing or whatever it is for those days. And I'm not saying they absolutely should do it, but the NFL could stretch this out more than it already is. And I think they'd still get a lot of viewers, and they'd still get a lot of people who would be interested in the draft.
And you raise an interesting point, I think unintentionally, as to how that process is going to unfold. There isn't going to be a stage. There isn't going to be a desk with 3 or 4 people. And if they're there, they're going to be sitting at opposite ends of it like the big giant table in the mansion where you've, passed the salt and you got to walk 50 feet.
You mean there's no more 9 people on the desk?
No, that will not happen this time around. And it's going to be a bunch of people by Zoom video conference. It's going to be a bunch of people wearing AirPods while they talk on TV. It's going to be technologically the equivalent of spinning 50 plates because they're going to be bringing all these people in remotely from their homes, whatever technology they're using. That's how this thing is going to come off, which is going to make it so much more different, but also so much more compelling. And look, the NFL understands that there is value to the nation right now, but also value to the NFL. It will be the only thing that is on the calendar for April. So we're going to talk about it for the next 3 weeks and 6 days. We're going to get ourselves focused on that event. And I think it's going to draw in, Peter, some casual fans that otherwise only pay attention to the NFL on Super Bowl Sunday because it's something. It's going to be a shared experience that unites everyone at a time when we all have kind of hunkered down in our own little worlds and are focusing on whatever show we're streaming, whatever the news. This is something that's going to be a break from all of the negative that we all can experience at the same time. It's going to kind of feel like a real sporting event. And that's why I think the ratings, whatever the high watermark has been in the past, this is going to blow past it because of what's currently going on. So, yes, it's going to help us, but it's also going to help the NFL.
Mike, I also think that, and again, we're getting way too deep into the weeds probably for everything that's going on. But one of the things that I think the NFL is going to have to think about with this draft, because it's going to be tremendously inconvenient. The technology is going to be fine, but you're not going to be able to have the contact and the conversations that you normally have before a draft. So my feeling is that the NFL, one of the things they should do is consider stretching out the time, probably in both the first and second rounds, to be able to give coaches more of a chance to pick up the phone instead of the scout being in the same room. He might be on the phone, or he might be on Skype or something like that. He might even be in the next room. I don't know, but it's not going to be the same thing. It's not going to be as convenient as it always was. So I think those are the kind of things, now that everybody knows it's going to happen on April 23rd, I think those are the kind of things, the mechanical things that the NFL's got to think about.
Well, any suggestions that anyone with any team would like to make along those lines, it is very important that those suggestions be made directly and exclusively to the league office. Do not talk to Peter King about it. Do not talk to me about it, lest you get yourself in trouble. Here's the line from the next to the last paragraph of the memo that Roger Goodell sent last night. The Management Council Executive Committee was also clear, and I share the committee's view, that public discussion of issues relating to the draft serves no useful purpose and is grounds for disciplinary action. That's any discussion, positive, negative, neutral. If you talk about any of the issues relating to the draft and you work for a team or you work for the league, you are going to be punished. I've heard from people who are apoplectic. Now, I don't know. Can you get punished for talking about your disagreement with the fact that you can get punished for talking about the draft? I don't know how far down that rabbit hole Roger Goodell is going to go. But the idea that the hammer can fall on anyone who says anything publicly about the decision to go forward with the draft, that is some heavy-handed stuff, Peter.
Yeah, you know, Mike, I'm sure you have the sort of same relationship with some people around the league that you probably woke up this morning and had a few text messages to your phone that basically said essentially, and I'll paraphrase, what country are we living in? You know, and what I think is a little odd about this, when I read that memo last night, that just really stuck out to me because remember during Ray Rice, where everybody and his brother and his sister, players and everything, are throwing Molotov cocktails at Roger Goodell, just absolutely obliterating Roger Goodell. And to the best of my knowledge, nobody ever got disciplined for those things. And now let's say we fast forward it 1 week. And let's say Mickey Loomis, this coming week, the general manager of the Saints, who, as you referred to on my podcast this week, said that he thought the draft should be delayed. There were just too many problems that are going to prevent a real legitimate draft where you have all the information that you need. And he said, I think the draft should be delayed. The difference between him saying that on Wednesday of this week versus on Wednesday of next week might be about $250,000. And so, in my opinion, I think I'd feel frustrated if I were front office people in the NFL, knowing that, and Mike, here's one other thing I would tell you, and I don't know what's happened to you in the last few days, but I can tell you in the last, say, 10 days, you know, I've covered this league for 36 years, and in the last 10 days, I can't get most of the people I normally get to talk to me off the record about the draft and about everything else going on around the league. It's either non-return texts or phone calls, or I'll talk to you in a few weeks. And it's a little weird what's going on out there. I think there's no question that front offices have gotten the message.
Well, and it's funny, you mentioned the text messages that we woke up to. The people in the league know who the agitators and the troublemakers are, and they know how to push my buttons and get me cranked up. And I've been exercising as much restraint as I possibly can. I'm trying to be the anti-Woody Woodpecker in this situation and realize that people who would like to unleash publicly and can't are going to try to push our buttons to get us to do it. I'll share with you one text I got last night. Thank God for the First Amendment. I'll sleep better tonight. That was a reaction, obviously, to the thou shalt not discuss any issues relating to the draft going forward on April 23 to April 25. And look, I kind of want that Woody Woodpecker troublemaker inside of me, Peter, kind of wants to see someone test it, to see if the NFL actually would discipline someone for raising legitimate concerns. I mean, every workplace in the country has whistleblower protections where if someone speaks up about something that they disagree with, they can't be thrown out the door. They can't be punished in some way. And it would be very, very intriguing to see if the NFL would actually go through with it, if a GM would decide to go on the record today, or a head coach or an owner, and say, it's wrong to go forward on April 23rd, and it's wrong to tell people they can't express that dissent.
Yeah, I'm not, as I said a minute ago, Mike, I'm not even sure it's wrong to go forward. I can say there's no question about it. I'm writing next week about a guy who ended this year hurt in college, didn't go to the combine, and is not going to have any exposure to any team other than by FaceTime, and is like morose about the whole thing. And I think one of the things that we're seeing right now is that this is going to be, and not just technologically, this is going to be one of the weirdest drafts that we've ever covered. It's almost like, I think Daniel Jeremiah said something great in my column the other day, and he said, with what we're seeing right now, if the draft goes on as scheduled, basically, we're going to see teams hitting a lot more singles than going for triples, especially later in the draft. In other words, playing it safe through the draft, because they would rather go with the guy who at least they've looked face-to-face, who they like his tape, and they've talked to face-to-face for 15 minutes in Indianapolis. At the very least now, they seem to have somewhat of an idea of who this guy is. But I can tell you that a lot of teams are extremely uncomfortable with this.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.